All right, so today we're going to talk about, as an accounting firm, how to close a lead in the most profitable way possible to have them. It's not just a paying client, but a very profitable client. And this is going to be focused mostly on business clients. So we're going to talk about the old way, and having conversations with hundreds of accounting firms. There are so many ways that this is doing now. A lot of inefficiencies out there. It boils down to 6 major stages. So we're going to go through the old way. Then I'm also going to go into the new way to do it to totally optimize all 6 stages here. So what we have here is the first stage is qualify. Then it's going to go into the pricing, right? So once you make sure that they're actually a qualified lead, you're going to make sure that you're going to be able to price them accordingly. You're going to be able to engage them, right? So give them some sort of intent that you want to work together. And then you have to close that lead, right? And in order to close, they have to accept. So you want to make sure that you have a very thorough acceptance process. But if they don't accept, you're going to have to go back to some stages, right? Maybe you're going to have to requalify. Maybe you're going to have to reprice. Maybe they're not a good fit. So sometimes you're going to have to go back to earlier stages. And then finally, after acceptance, assuming that is possible, you're going to actually get paid. So let's go ahead and let's go through each of these one by one. So to qualify a lead, the first thing, now there's many different ways to do that. So this is assuming that you already have the lead, right? Maybe that's some referral, maybe they left you a voicemail. Anyway, basically a lead is going to be a person that, or a business that is not a client right now, and that you're going to have to do some work to get them on board with you. So there's different ways, right? So lots of accountants, particularly boutique accounting firms, small and medium-sized firms, they go through a consultation process. Usually there's some sort of free consultation. So for instance, there's a lot of 1-hour free consultation, and this can be a phone call, a Zoom call, and let's just make sure. So yeah, you're gonna have to ignore my chicken scratch here. Okay, so the 1-hour free consultation, and so how does that happen, right? Some accounting firms are very meticulous about this process. Others not so much. Lots are just kind of like whipping out a sheet of paper and just taking out a lot of notes as they go along. So maybe that can be just just sort of pulling out a piece of paper. And or maybe there's some sort of intake form, right? So you have an intake form on your website, or some sort of form where you're gathering some particular information. Now, if they actually fill out the form, that's great. A lot of times you're coming in cold, right? It's returning a call. Hey, I need an accountant. I need someone to help me with my business. Can you help me? And you have to really gather all those details. And this is just the beginning of it, right? Assuming you have that initial interaction, then you're on to really, assuming that they're qualified, how am I going to price them out? And there's many ways to do that, right? So maybe you have your own homegrown pricing system, right? Maybe you have some kind of Excel sheet or pricing sheet that you're using across the board, where you're going through different line items there. Maybe there is some existing pricing lists that you have that is just kind of like a checklist of services. And so the price list is more of a static. Excel, you may have like some additional calculations that you use with that. Or you might just maybe you're trying out some sort of like bundle pricing. So maybe like a 3-tiered kind of pricing. You see sort of like a bronze, silver, gold kind of plan. And this is actually better because you're bundling key services, so you're controlling things like price and scope. There are some downsides, right? There's not a lot of customizations. You're hoping that you can essentially bundle those folks into that. Okay. Now, other ways are just like taking kind of like a cost plus approach, right? So you just basically figure out the cost of how much it's going to cost to service them, and add on a particular fee on top of that. You can also, I've seen a lot of accountants charge by another kind of form, so charge based on tax forms, right? So maybe there are dozens of different tax forms that they have, and they can actually price out, and they just kind of go through and just kind of like go through one form, another form, and just add up those costs. So then there, again, you can kind of go deep into this. You can have a situation where you want more upfront, right? So maybe you want to connect to their QuickBooks file, so you can actually see the condition of their books. Maybe you have a feeling that maybe their books are out of shape, so you want to just really look into that before you take on that risk. Or maybe you want to see their prior tax forms, right? So some prior years, so you can get an idea of how what their business has been like over the last few years or so. So prior tax forms, and let's see. So these are some of the key ways to gather this information. And what you're doing, if you have a lot of this information here, you may even go deeper, so you're verifying like the number of transactions. So for instance, let's just have you're verifying transactions, verifying the number of transactions. So how many payments they're making, so you can price that out. Verifying if their books are up to date. So there's lots of ways you can kind of like gather this information. It's in each of these takes time in and of itself. So if you have your pricing, these are basically ways to price, and these are ways to essentially gather more information. Now some before they even have an initial consultation, they'll request this information here, because they want to be prepared for that first call, just to kind of put your best foot forward. Again, you're relying on people to actually get you that information up front. Okay, so the next step is going to be the actual engagement. So as I go through this, I'm going to kind of give some estimates on how long each of these takes. So qualification usually takes between 1 to 4 hours, depending on each of these processes you're going through. So let's make a note here. And for pricing, that can take between usually 2 hours to about 2 weeks, which is quite a bit of time, but it's not too uncommon. Okay, so the engagement. So this is you've had the initial consult. Maybe you've gathered some information. You put some initial pricing together, and you're ready to essentially engage them. So basically, you're kind of organizing. You're collating your notes based on the conversation you had. Looking back on the notes just to make sure you didn't miss anything. But it's a big deal, right? Because you may have forgotten to ask a question or offer a service. So there are many opportunities. Well, there's different ways that you can actually leave money on the table by not asking these key questions. Okay, so collecting notes, and now this is assuming that you've gathered some of this information. So if not, you're going to chase them down for additional information, right? So maybe you're still waiting on the intake form, or you're waiting on some of this information here, connecting to your QuickBooks, or getting their prior tax return. So you may have to chase them down. And then really determining what service they offer. Now, if you're a general services firm, you may have like some key services, like maybe you provide advisory services. Let's just call it client advisory services. Regular bookkeeping, tax preparation, or maybe just just planning and maintenance kind of work. Or we're just actually going to separate that. So maintenance. Planning as well. Many different services that you want to kind of get an idea for. then you actually have to engage. So how do you engage that? Is it it's not a verbal, it's not a handshake, so you're going to probably get them to sign something, right? And maybe that's involves sending them some kind of an engagement. So you're going to send that out to the client. And now you also have to make sure that they actually received it, right? So you'll send that out. Maybe it's through email, maybe it's through regular postal mail, but you have to make sure that they got it. And lots of times it's going to be a lot of follow-up, right? So you're going to follow up, lots of that going on, and you need to make sure that that happens before you can go on to the other stage. Now the engagement can be a beast, right? It can be an hour if you're really on top of things, or it can take up to about a week, sometimes longer, but let's just say up to about a week to go through all these key bits here. The closing process, so this is where you kind of have everything together. Maybe they got your initial engagement, they're looking it over, they're not quite on board, so you have to close. And closing means essentially getting them to sign off on them being a client of yours. So this may involve maybe another meeting, right? Maybe a second meeting, second meeting or third meeting. I've seen fourth, fifth meetings as well. Also at this stage, you have to get ready for any kind of rebuttals. Maybe they say that that they're not ready, or maybe you took too long and they end up going for another client. So you have to be prepared for some follow-up meetings as well. And if they went with like another CPA, then that's pretty much a lost deal at this point. So it kind of stops here if you're not able to actually close. And sometimes they may ask for some revisions, right? Maybe they want you to change your pricing. Maybe they don't really, the pricing is just, they're not satisfied with it. They think it's too much in terms of, the rate you're charging them. So you may have to go back to some earlier stages, and maybe they're just not a good fit. So maybe you actually have to go back here to requalify them. Maybe you have to go back to the pricing stage to reprice them. And then, of course, after that's done, you have to re-engage them. So a lot of these can essentially go back. So let's assume you made it this far to the closing stage, and things are looking good, and you feel like you're basically ready for acceptance. So just really quick though, on the close, this takes about, you can do that in about an hour to about a week. Okay. So on the acceptance stage, now different ways to do that, right? Maybe you're old school. Maybe you're sending them a form via email to scan their signature, or faxing it over to them. Hopefully not that old school, but that still exists. Maybe you have your own e-sign software to do that with, which is a lot better. Now maybe there's you use some other platform to do that. There's like plenty of good ones out there. Maybe using BizPayo, and kind of biased because I one of the founders of BizPayo, so it's a great platform for engagements and payments. But there's a lot of other great ones out there, right? There's Practice Ignition, and maybe you're using Proposalify. There's plenty of those out there, so that is not going to really make or break you. So this is essentially the acceptance stage, and you need to be able to have them sign off on something and give that to you to really make it clear that they have an intent to on board with you. Okay, so the acceptance, this can go from about an hour to about a week. And again, it largely depends on how long is each of these taking. Are you waiting for literally like a piece of mail, a check to come in the mail? Are you waiting for some sort of like sign off? If you have a digital platform, then a lot of this stuff is automated. So again, it really depends on what sort of systems you have in place for this. And then the last stage is actually getting paid, and that is how are they going to make that payment, right? So now if they're actually sending you, let's just say they have you've sent them an invoice. So if it's like a one time, you may send maybe let's say a one time tax preparation. So you send them an invoice for that. And that could be through regular mail, or that could be through email as well. So you're sending that out for actually getting paid, and this is where essentially like a paper check would come in, and this would be a digital payment. There's other ways, right? So if it's actually a paper check, you have to deposit that into your bank. If there is maybe you have some sort of electronic drafting document, right? So you have to make sure that you send that to them, they sign off on it, and they send it back to you. Maybe using something like super simple, so you have like a QuickBooks invoice and you have a link to it at the bottom. Maybe you're using like a PayPal link on that, or maybe you send them out that invoice and you say, hey, here's my PayPal link, pay me, and then we can basically get started. And if it's a recurring, whether that's monthly or quarterly, then you may have to go through some of these again just to make sure that you're getting that monthly or quarterly payment. So it can be time consuming, definitely, and this is probably somewhere between 1 hour to about 1 week as well. Okay, so this is really encapsulates a lot of the old ways to go ahead and do it. It's totally possible. Some firms are doing this and with different combinations and very efficient, but again, if you add all of this up, I mean, you're looking at multiple hours to weeks, if not months in some cases, chasing down clients for various information. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the new way. And the new way consists of using a process that's more like a playbook that can take these 6 major phases and make it so that you can the flow that you go through these stages are pretty much one after each other. Everything is in order, and you're accelerating each of these processes here, and it's going to be largely the same 6 stages, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just see if we can copy this, and I'm going to put this here. Get rid of this, get rid of the old way. Okay, cool. So let's go up a bit here. So the new way is going through these 6 stages, and what I'm recommending is so I'm with a company called BookGel, and we essentially take all these six stages and accelerate that. So let's just make a note here. So BookGel, what BookGel does is it's a pricing and closing app for accountants. So it lets you qualify them typically on the first call. You're able to price them real time. So yes, it uses machine learning, and this machine learning is backed by millions of dollars of transactions from some of our other companies, and thousands of proposals and engagements from our other company that we've used over the years. And we've basically built a smart engine to be able to, you're essentially telling the software what services your firm provides, and it tells you the exact questions to ask them on the initial conversation in a smart way so that it's optimizing for your fee. And it automatically gives the fee in real time. So you can do this right over Zoom, you can do this in person or Google Hangouts. However, the key thing is it's value pricing baked in. So it allows you to, before it gets to your fee, it actually shows you how much you can actually save the client based on the questions that you've asked them. Think about it. As an accountant, there's probably many things you're doing already to save them money, right? If they're an LLC, maybe moving them to an S corp. Maybe you're being able to take advantages of depreciation or other various methods of saving them on tax dollars. So there's many ways to go ahead and do that. Then it allows you to, with a few clicks of a button, send them an engagement, have them basically close, they accept, and get paid. So this is pretty much all in one, and it can really take, instead of the old way from going from many hours to weeks, with BookGel, you can do these stages in 20 minutes to about 60 minutes. So it's a revolutionary process that we use to optimize every step of the way, where a lot of these one-off time sinks are taken out of the equation. So anyway, like I said, very interesting methodology that we're using, and we actually we're in beta right now. So we have a number of firms that are using this to optimize their process. So if you want to learn a little more, I'll just make a note here. You can go to bookgel.com, and this is going to be where you can get a lot more information off of what we're doing and what the system looks like. So I invite you to check it out, and we'll see you in the next video.